What's up, everybody? Mark and I are back today, and today's conversation is going to be a bit all about Tom Brady. So Brady this offseason, after 20 years with the New England Patriots, where he set records for Super Bowl starts by a quarterback and Super Bowl wins by a quarterback with 6, I believe 9 respectively, he decided to sign with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, 2 years, $50 million. So now we finally see Brady and Belichick break up. It's a new era, sort of for football. Presumably the New England Patriots dynasty will not continue, at least for the short term. And now Brady brings some new energy to Tampa Bay and brings a new competitor into the NFC South. So, Mark, my first question for you is, do you think this is a good move for Tom Brady?
I see it as a good move for Tom Brady for a personal gain. You look at the weapons he's got down in Tampa Bay now with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, two top 5 receivers in terms of receiving yardage last year. So definitely he got better weapons down in Tampa Bay. I think Tampa Bay they were pretty decent last year, 7-9. They did a lot better than teams expected them to do, maybe. I think that they can improve with Tom Brady now. I think Winston played fine for them last year, but Brady has that veteran presence and kind of knows what to do on the field, that field general type of thing. So I think it was a good move for him, and I think he'll definitely have a good year this year.
I think where they get the biggest improvement is you got Winston, who throws, I think, like maybe 33 touchdowns, over 5,000 yards, but he threw 30 interceptions as well. And Brady's never been the kind of guy who's thrown large interception totals, unlike someone like maybe even Peyton Manning used to throw a lot of interceptions back in the day.
Right.
But Brady's never been that guy. The most he's ever thrown in a season is 14, and he hasn't done that since 2005. So a guy like Brady really cuts down the turnovers. And if you look at Tampa Bay, like, their offense is really good. Their defense was really good last year, except for their secondary. Their front was really good. So I think they definitely become a much more well-rounded football team. I think they'll get out of some sticky scenarios that cost them in the long run last year. But the question everyone wants to answer now is, who will do better this year? Bill Belichick and New England Patriots, or Tom Brady and Tampa Bay Buccaneers?
Yeah, it's a tough question. I guess it really depends. For me, it depends how New England does in the draft. So right now, I'm going to say Tampa Bay does better, just because we talked about they're pretty loaded on defense, minus the secondary there. You look at guys like Shaquille Barrett, and then Devin White was a rookie last year. I see him kind of improving. And then on offense, we've mentioned Godwin and Evans. I see Tampa Bay as a better football team overall right now. But like I said, it depends what we'll come back after the draft, and we'll see what New England did. But right now, it's hard to not say Tampa Bay.
I think it would take a massive screw up on Tampa Bay's part, and also some really good wins on New England's part, to change this, even just the draft itself. Because you look at some of the players, the New England Patriots have lost a lot of players this year. They got back the McCourty brothers, which is always good for stability. But at the same point, you're looking at a team that has lost, I think the center they had that played most of the year for them, he's gone. They've lost guys on the defense, a lot of guys on defense, a couple of special teamers who were very good and very impactful for them. They've lost Kyle Van Noy. They lost several linebackers, actually. And then there's some holes now opening up on the defensive line as well. You lost, I'm trying to remember his name. I think it was Danny Shelton. So you've lost a couple of guys.
Yes.
So you're at a point now where New England, I think they are opening up with holes. I think they will retool and rebuild and try to get better. But I think this coming season is probably a down year for them. I think they need to admit that and just accept it. Bill Belichick is willing to accept that, because by adding Brian Hoyer and not bringing in someone who might be able to compete more for the starting job, I think it signals that they're actually willing to roll with Jarrett Stidham for a year. And that could obviously not work out very well for them. They could get like 3 or 4 wins. But even if that happens, I think they're all right with reevaluating the quarterback position in 2021.
Right, and I would agree with that. I think Bill Belichick's willing to admit that. I wouldn't call it a rebuild necessarily, but you use the word retool. So maybe take this season and maybe next season at most, and then kind of reevaluate where you are after those 2 years and see what you get in the draft and free agency. Tampa Bay will probably have a better record.
And in the absolute worst case scenarios for every other team, the New England Patriots could get Trevor Lawrence. at the top of the draft next year, or Justin Fields even. That's also a name that will be up there.
Mm-hmm.
Or Bill O'Brien pulls his usual tricks and trades Deshaun Watson before the final year of his contract to New England. Those are like the three doomsday options for the rest of the NFL that hopefully never happen.
Yeah, but the first two you mentioned are pretty realistic, especially if they don't perform well this season. If they get a top 10 draft pick, they could definitely see Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields going to New England there, and then Deshaun Watson would be another BS move by Bill O'Brien.
Yeah, that would be nuts.
But we shall see.
Yeah, and then if you look at Tampa Bay, we were talking about Tampa Bay. Their defense, we mentioned the defensive front. They led the league in rush defense last year, only allowing 73.8 rushing yards per game. Mm-hmm. The New York Jets were in second with 86.9, so 10 yards, more than 10 yards behind Tampa Bay. This shows just how good they were. And they brought back most of their key pieces. And Ndamukong Suh was a free agent. They brought him back. They brought Shaq Barrett back. Jason Pierre-Paul, they brought him back as well. So they got back basically all their key pieces. And now Devin White, who was hurt for a little bit of last year, hopefully he's healthy the entire time.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got Levante David, who I think is one of the most underrated linebackers in the entire NFL. I love what Levante David brings to the table.
Yeah, absolutely. I love him too. But yeah, you look at the defense, and we mentioned before the secondary is really their only concern on defense, in my opinion. If they can improve that with maybe some low key free agents that are still left, or the draft too. They picked number 14 in the draft this year. They could go. I have them going, or we had them going offensive tackle yesterday, but they could go. They could go secondary, so it's we'll see what happens. But yeah, they're not far away from being a true contender in the NFC South there, in my opinion.
Yeah, and you mentioned that. So my next question to you is, how far do you think the Buccaneers will go this coming year? What do you think the record will be, and where do you think they'll end up in the NFC South and in the NFC as a whole?
Right. That's a pretty loaded question because it's really a toss-up. It depends. I think they're going to live and die by Tom Brady. It depends how well Brady performs. Last year, a lot of people think he had a down year. But maybe now, like we mentioned, he has better weapons in Tampa Bay than he did in New England last year. They have the potential to bolster their offensive line in Tampa Bay, and they've got that defense down there. I could see them getting second in the division and possibly a wild card spot. I don't think they're going to do better than New Orleans will. I don't see that happening. I think New Orleans is in win now mode for sure. You look at they bring in Emmanuel Sanders, and they still got Mike Thomas, Alvin Kamara. They have plenty of pieces to make a long run again down in New Orleans. But I could see Tampa Bay being a 5 or 6 seed in the NFC, or even there's a 7 seed now.
There's more options now.
Yeah, so they could easily go a 9-7, 10-6, and then make the playoffs there in the NFC.
Let me see. A 7th seed, Tampa Bay Buccaneers would be the scariest 7th seed with Tom Brady. Like that'd be the scariest 7th seed to run into.
Oh yeah.
But I think Tampa Bay could actually win this division. Honestly, I'm not trying to be exaggerate that. I think they honestly have a good chance just because the Saints have their own issues. Drew Brees missed time last year for the first time in a while, but he's had trouble finishing years out. Even the playoffs last year, he was struggling a little bit down the stretch. He wasn't throwing as accurately as we're used to seeing him. So I have questions about Drew Brees and his ability to endure an entire season. I think on paper, the New Orleans Saints are more talented. They have more veteran players. I think they've just got a better offensive line as well, which really helps out. They got better running backs too. But I do think because how strong Tampa Bay's defensive front is, if they just manage to focus and even help the secondary just a little bit, I think they'll be that much closer. I think, honestly, Tom Brady, I love Drew Brees. I think he's underrated in terms of his all-time rankings and stuff like that. But I think Tom Brady has the it factor that Drew Brees hasn't really shown since they won the Super Bowl the first time.
Right.
I think Brady is the guy, in my opinion. Brady is the guy who will alter this whole scenario. But I think in Tampa Bay, he will really turn things around. I think he has a chance to be a guy who will lead them to the division crown, possibly one of the top 2 seeds in the NFC.
Wow. That's a pretty bold prediction.
I'll go that far. I honestly think so. I think the 49ers are a team I think could have a major drop-off because you know how it happens sometimes. You get to the Super Bowl, and then it's like after that disappointing loss, you fall off like the Rams this past year. I think that could totally be a scenario that happens, especially with Kyle Shanahan refusing to run the ball and basically committing the same mistakes he did when he was in Atlanta all over again. Mm-hmm. I could see the 49ers falling off. I could see the NFC East kind of being a repeat of this past year, where it's basically 9-7, 10-6 teams going to end up winning it out.
Yeah, for sure.
I could see honestly the NFC North could honestly just self-destruct in general because those teams are very fragile. I think the Green Bay Packers weren't as good as their record showed last year.
Sure.
I think Minnesota just for some reason doesn't always fulfill their potential as well. So I could see Tampa Bay being one of the two best teams in the NFC. I think I would go that far.
Wow, yeah, that's a pretty bold prediction. I can't say I agree with you, unfortunately, but I see them as a 9-7, 10-6 team, and one of those 3 wild card spots. Just because I can't see them winning the NFC South, unfortunately.
It's going to be entertaining though to watch. Because we get to see Drew Brees versus Tom Brady twice a year now. And that's something that hasn't happened a lot. Like historically, we get to see those two guys square off twice a year, and we also get to see him play Matt Ryan, a former MVP. So we had some good quarterback play in there. I do wish we still had Cam Newton in Carolina. That would be a much better situation than just having Teddy Bridgewater. But it's going to be an interesting division to watch. But Mark, what about Tom Brady's legacy as a whole? How do you think this move to Tampa Bay after 20 years in New England alters how we're going to view Tom Brady in like the long run of NFL history?
Yeah. Part of me wants to say it kind of does taint his legacy a little bit there. Just because, look, you win 6 Super Bowls in New England and all these awards, MVPs, et cetera. And then you go to a team like Tampa Bay, who maybe doesn't have quite the history that New England has, especially now after what Brady did for them. So part of me wants to say, yeah, he's going to taint his legacy. But at the same time, you look at the past, and we weren't born yet when this happened, but other NFL legends like Joe Montana and Jerry Rice, they switched teams or went to new teams at the end, the last leg in their career there. And then they're still remembered as historic parts of the National Football League. So while right now he might not do as well in Tampa Bay as he did in New England, I think down the line, people are still going to look at Tom Brady as the greatest quarterback of all time. It's hard to not.
Yeah. I think he's secure as the greatest quarterback of all time. I do agree with you. We've seen guys do this in the past. We saw Joe Montana, you mentioned one. We've seen Johnny Unitas went through the same thing, but we haven't seen that. But I know it's happened.
Yes, it's happened.
Joe Namath did it as well, and they both had kind of unsuccessful stints in their final places. I think Unitas finished as a Charger, and Namath finished as a Ram, I'm pretty sure. But for Brady, I think it won't be that. It will be a more successful run in Tampa Bay than what those two experienced. I think he'll have – let me put it this way. If he gets to an NFC Championship game with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, it will be significantly more of an accomplishment than if he did it with the New England Patriots. Because he'll be doing it without Bill Belichick, and he'll be doing it in Tampa Bay, a team that has not been good since John Gruden in that Bucs defense where it had Derek Brooks and Rondé Barber and all those guys, John Lynch. It hasn't been good. That hasn't been a good franchise in years. Yeah. So if he's able to get to an NFC Championship game or something of that caliber with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I think it actually enhances his legacy.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. It all depends. It depends what happens this year, and then he's on a 2-year deal, so this year and next year. But as of right now, I would say because I don't see them doing as well. Maybe if Brady retires after these next 2 years, maybe for 3 to 5 years, his legacy is a little bit tainted. Like, oh, look at what he wasn't able to carry the legacy on from New England to Tampa Bay. But then as the years go by, he'll definitely be remembered more for what he did in New England. So
do you think that's fair? Because I know it's going to be a situation where people are going to put Bill Belichick against Tom Brady from now on, pretty much just seeing like who made who. And now people are considering like we're finally going to get to see who made whom. So do you think it's fair if someone eventually holds this against Brady or Belichick if they don't experience as much success now they split up?
Do I think it's fair? No, because honestly, I don't see it as who made who. I see it as they each kind of helped each other. Like they each took a step above their own ladders and helping each other up the ladder there. So I would never make that comparison when doing sports debates with our friends or whatever. But if people do, I wouldn't see it as fair. Absolutely not. Yeah.
No, I agree with you on that. I think they should be viewed together. And I think you shouldn't have to decide who made who. I think you should just be able to accept that they're both great. Because we've done that in the past with different quarterbacks and coaching combos, like we've done with Terry Bradshaw and Chuck Noll. Tom Landry, Roger Staubach. You don't have to split the two up. I think you can just accept them in tandem and view their greatness combined together.
Right.
But I do have a question for you. Do you think Brady, I know you said people think Brady had a little bit of a down year last year. Do you think Brady plays better this year or worse in terms of like production and stuff like that?
I'd have to say he plays better just because I know age is always a factor when it comes to quarterbacks. But like we've mentioned before, just the weapons he has now in Tampa Bay are significantly better than what he had in New England to work with last year. I look at the offensive line at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and I think they're better. Especially they're probably going to address it in the draft, so they're going to get some good young talent there to plug and play and get ready to play Week 1. And I think he will have a statistically better year, and he'll probably make more plays.
I'm just going to give you some stats from his 2017 MVP season.
Mm-hmm.
He threw for 4,577 yards, 32 touchdowns, and 8 interceptions. I think he could put up those kind of numbers. I don't think he will win the MVP, but I think he could put up those kind of numbers again.
Yeah, he could definitely put up those numbers again. That year for MVP, Carson Wentz should have won, as I'm biased here, but that was kind of a down year for the MVP award. I think it was who was nominated. I think it was Gurley, Wentz, and Tom Brady were the 3 finalists for that year.
Yeah, and Wentz missed like the final 3 weeks of the season or something, right?
Yeah, Wentz got hurt week 13, I believe, or week 14 there. But not a lot of those guys didn't put up like super great numbers. Gurley had a great year at running back, but Wentz's numbers, he was up there because of the plays he was making more so than the numbers. He only had 33 touchdown passes. So yeah, I think Brady can put up that stat line again, but he won't win MVP just because you look at what guys like Patrick Mahomes and Russell Wilson are able to do. Even Deshaun Watson was in the conversation, and Lamar Jackson too. They're just putting up crazy stats and numbers. So
yeah, I think they've changed how we view the MVP or what the requirements are to get to the MVP level. But I do think Brady could put those. I mean, it's not unrealistic to believe Brady can put those numbers up again. I think he'd actually surpass those this year. I mean, he only threw 8 interceptions last year, the same amount he threw in that MVP season. He's not that far removed from it. And because it's Brady, I know we would say for most 42, 43-year-old quarterbacks, we'd be saying, no, this is ridiculous. But it's Brady. And I don't think we need to look at Brady's age so much as we can just look at his play, because his age really doesn't mean as much for him as it has for other people.
Right.
I do think he can put up those kind of numbers. I think it's not unrealistic at all. And I actually expect him to. I expect him to rebound, have a very good year, and return to that maybe top 10 quarterback conversation level. Because he wasn't really in that for me last year. He was kind of more towards the 11-12 range. Mm-hmm. Well, I think he can get back to that level. Especially in Tampa Bay with all those weapons. It's just crazy what they've got down there. But I do want to bring it up. Where do you think the Patriots will finish? Because we've talked mostly about the Buccaneers at this point. Where do you think New England's going to finish in their division?
Yeah. And I think their ceiling would probably be second in that division in the AFC East there. I see Buffalo now as the team to beat after trading for Stephon Diggs. I think Josh Allen is going to take a big step forward this year. And I really like what Buffalo's doing. The Jets are kind of a toss-up. Last year, a lot of people thought the Jets were going to be pretty good, and they ended up not being very good. And Sam Darnold being out definitely played a part of that, but hopefully he can play the full season this year. And Le'Veon Bell underperforming. And Miami's a toss-up too, just because they've got 3 first-round draft picks. They spent a ton of money in free agency, and they're probably going to draft their new franchise quarterback at the end of the month here. But it depends how they can all come together and mesh there. Miami had a very quick rebuild, really only 1 season it took them and 1 off season there. But if I had to do it right now, I would go Buffalo at 1, the Jets at 2, New England at 3, and Miami at 4. And I would be willing to flip-flop Miami and New England there for the bottom of the division.
Yeah, I think so too. I think you can definitely see a scenario where New England ends up at 4. We have to always say they could win as long as Bill Belichick's there, because he's that kind of coach. Mm-hmm. He's that good. I think he would take those scrap pieces and form a winning team with them. But at the same point, realistically looking at that roster, even with the level of coaching they have, I think this is a team that's probably 3rd or 4th in that division.
Yeah.
The only way I think they can reverse that and he can get them in a 2nd spot is I don't believe in Adam Gase at all. I think the Jets could crumble and fall apart at any time, in my opinion, just because of how that team is set up. Mm-hmm. But otherwise, I think it would be very hard for them to reach the second in that division. I think Miami's also going to be competitive this year, especially if they draft Tua, or even if they stick with Fitzpatrick. Honestly, because I like what they're doing down there. I like what the coaching staff has done. I think they're motivated to play. And so I believe the Miami Dolphins are a team that could actually finish second in this division, and therefore push New England down even further. But
yeah, I think the whole division's a toss-up. It depends. Like you said, Adam Gase. We'll see if he ends up being a dumpster fire there in New York going into year 3 here. And then it's hard to gauge New England and Miami because, like you said, you should never sleep on Bill Belichick. Almost, it'd be hard to do that. And then Miami retooled a lot this offseason, and the draft is still upcoming, so they have a big opportunity to retool more. But we'll see if it can all come together for them.
Yeah, I've got one final question for you before we go about Tom Brady. Do you see Brady playing in the NFL after this current contract ends?
No. Well, it's a tough question because I could have seen him retiring after he beat the Rams in the Super Bowl 2 years ago. Kind of taking the Peyton Manning route there, but he claims he's still competitive. He claims he's still got it. It's like I just said, it's hard to sleep on Bill Belichick. Well, it's hard to sleep on Tom Brady too. So I could see him potentially keep renewing contracts at a 1-year pace with Tampa Bay, or he goes and signs another 2-year deal after this current contract is up with another team. But I think he should retire after this, regardless of outcome. If he goes 4-12 both years, or if he wins another Super Bowl with Tampa Bay, I think he should retire no matter what after this contract is up.
See, I think it's funny because his wife has pushed him. I think he came out like 2 years ago, where his wife was kind of pushing him to like end it, to retire, something like that early. But for Brady, I think it's always about the next win. Brady's always about like taking it to the next level. And for him, I don't know if he necessarily season end. I know Drew Brees mentioned that this is the first offseason he considered retirement. So right. I think Drew Brees season end. I don't think Tom Brady's at that point in his career yet, even though he's older. I don't think he sees an end in sight, even after the 2 years, because he doesn't want to get traded. He's made it so he can't get traded. He has no trade clause in his contract. So I think that's in case he falls off, in case he experiences that steep decline that Peyton Manning had. He doesn't want to be able to get traded to a third team to get basically discarded at the end of his career. Right. But I don't think Brady sees an end. I think Brady's trying to prop himself up maybe for success over the next 2 years, and I think he'll reevaluate after that. I don't think he's decided yet whether he wants to retire or not. Now, I could see a scenario where Brady goes to another team other than Tampa Bay or New England for like maybe a year or two and kind of suffers more there and doesn't play up to his usual level of play, because I could see Brady being the guy who has trouble letting it go because he experienced so much success during his career.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I could definitely see that happen. Being afraid to let go there. You look at Peyton Manning's final year. They didn't win that Super Bowl because of Peyton Manning. I think everyone's willing to admit that. So he kind of had a steep decline that year, and I don't think he wanted to retire, but I think he just took the realistic route and said, "Look, my play declined. I'm up there in age, and I just won the Super Bowl." So I think the stars really aligned for him there, and I think for Tom Brady to retire, the same type of thing would have to happen.
Yeah, I just don't know if that's going to happen. That's the thing. I don't know at this point in his career if you're going to be the team that's going to be able to go out on top and win the Super Bowl. He might have to accept that he ends up being past his prime and he's not going to be on a team that's going to win a Super Bowl, which would probably be hard for him. Someone who's experienced so much success and basically, I mean, we've joked about it. He's basically gotten to the Super Bowl at will almost over the last like 4 or 6 years. So for him to not have that final chapter of his career would be very strange.
Yeah, I agree with you. But we're just gonna have to see how it plays out. It's gonna be an interesting upcoming season for him.
Yeah, hopefully the changes in the NFL this year do not disappoint. We actually get an NFL season, we get a full season, and hopefully it turns out to be a very interesting and new way of viewing football and bring some new energy to the routineness that we've seen some teams reappearing in the Super Bowl last couple of years.
Yeah, I agree with you. You look at the new changes with the CBA, and then a bunch of new free agents went elsewhere. The 17-game season, and we mentioned the 17 playoff bracket for each conference there. So it'll definitely be, if the season happens, which fingers crossed, it's definitely going to be a fun year to look forward to.
All right, everyone, that's all we have for right now. That's Tom Brady's episode. We gave you our thoughts about where we think the greatest quarterback of all time is going to do when he's in Tampa Bay. what he'll do in his future, maybe even after the 2-year contract, and how we think that team is going to perform as a whole and how he'll compare to Bill Belichick this coming year. But anyways, I'd like to thank you for joining. Mark, do you have anything to say before we sign off here?
No, I think we hit every point, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, guys. We'll talk to you later. See ya.